The glass doors of Sterling National Bank slid open with a quiet hiss as the late afternoon sun spilled across the polished marble floor. It was 4:52 p.m., the busiest part of the day. When customers hurried to finish their banking before closing, conversations blended with the soft tapping of keyboards, the hum of printers, and the occasional beep of cash counters. Everything inside moved with the practiced rhythm of another ordinary business day. Then one man walked in, and without saying a single word, the room quietly decided who he was. Marcus Ellison adjusted the strap of his weathered leather briefcase and paused just inside the entrance. At 62 years old, his movements carried patience rather than urgency. His charcoal overcoat had been carefully pressed that morning, but the fabric around the cuffs had faded with time. His polished brown shoes showed years of honest wear, and the silver wedding band on his left hand caught the afternoon light as he gently held the door open for a young black woman pushing a stroller with her toddler asleep inside. "Thank you," she said with a warm smile. Marcus smiled back. "You're welcome, Mom." The little boy looked up sleepily and waved. Marcus returned the wave before quietly stepping farther into the lobby. Nothing about him demanded attention. No expensive watch, no designer suit. No flashy jewelry, no luxury car keys spinning around his finger. Just an older black man carrying a worn briefcase, walking with quiet dignity. From behind the glass walls of the branch manager's office, Rebecca Collins noticed him immediately. She had spent nearly 20 years managing one of Charlotte's busiest banking branches. The experience had taught her to make quick judgments, or at least she believed it had. Her eyes traveled over Marcus from head to toe. Old coat, scuffed shoes. Simple briefcase. She looked away before he even reached the teller counter. Across the lobby, customers waited in line. A businessman checked stock prices on his phone. 2 construction workers laughed. While discussing the weekend football game, an elderly couple reviewed paperwork together near the customer service desk. Near the entrance stood Officer Danielle Brooks, an off-duty Charlotte police officer, working a community partnership assignment with the bank. She wasn't there to intimidate anyone. Her role was simple: offer reassurance, answer safety concerns, and help customers feel secure. Officer Brooks believed something her academy instructor had repeated often: the strongest officers aren't the loudest. They're the ones who notice the things everyone else ignores. She glanced toward Marcus as he patiently joined the end of the line. There was nothing suspicious about him, only calm, only patience, only respect. She returned her attention to a conversation with the security guard, but continued observing the lobby from the corner of her eye. Just as years of police training had taught her, Marcus waited quietly without checking his watch. When another customer accidentally dropped several papers across the floor, he bent down immediately despite his age, helping gather every page before handing them back with a gentle smile. "No rush," he said. "These things happen." The woman thanked him. Slightly embarrassed, small acts of kindness often revealed more about a person's character than expensive clothes ever could. Finally, his turn arrived. A young black teller named Alicia Johnson greeted him with the same friendly professionalism she offered every customer. "Good afternoon, sir. How may I help you today?" "I'd like to make a deposit," Marcus replied. His voice was calm, steady, almost soothing. He carefully opened his leather briefcase and removed a sealed envelope. Every movement was deliberate, as though he respected even the smallest task. Alicia unfolded the check. Her fingers stopped moving. She blinked once, then twice. $3 million. She looked down at the amount again, convinced she had read it incorrectly. Then she checked the name, Marcus Ellison. The account information matched, still uncertain. Alicia looked back at the man standing before her. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't impatient. He simply waited. Years of customer service had taught Alicia never to judge people by appearances. Her grandmother had often reminded her, respect costs nothing, but disrespect can cost everything. She quietly excused herself one moment. Sir Rebecca Collins noticed the hesitation and walked confidently toward the counter. "What do we have?" Alicia handed her the check without speaking. Rebecca glanced at the amount, then at Marcus, then back to the check. For a second, silence settled between them. Instead of reviewing the routing information or contacting the issuing institution, Rebecca folded her arms. A faint smile crossed her face. Not a welcoming smile, a dismissive one. A $3 million check. Several nearby customers instinctively turned toward the conversation. Marcus answered politely, "Yes, ma'am." Rebecca looked him up and down again. Every assumption she had made when he entered returned stronger than before. "That's quite a number, it is." "And this belongs to you, it does." The branch manager chuckled softly, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. "You expect us to believe that—" The surrounding conversation slowly faded. People weren't staring openly yet, but they were listening. Officer Danielle Brooks noticed the subtle change in the room. Her instincts sharpened. Years of serving her community had taught her that trouble rarely began with shouting. More often it started with assumptions. Small moments when respect quietly disappeared. Marcus remained composed. "I don't expect anyone to believe me without verification." He said that's why banks have procedures. Rebecca's smile disappeared. Instead of appreciating his calm response, she interpreted it as confidence she wanted to challenge. She picked up the check once more, holding it between two fingers, while studying Marcus's worn coat, his weathered shoes, and the old leather briefcase resting on the counter around the lobby. Phone slowly lowered, conversation stopped. The room seemed to wait for what would happen next. Marcus stood exactly where he was, his hands resting calmly on the marble counter, showing the same quiet dignity his father had taught him decades earlier. Character, his father used to say, isn't measured by how people treat you when they know your worth. It's measured by how you choose to respond when they don't. Marcus had carried that lesson through every season of his life. Rebecca Collins rested the check on the polished marble counter without taking her eyes off Marcus Ellison. The lobby had grown noticeably quieter. Conversations that had filled the room only moments earlier faded into whispers as curious customers sensed something unusual unfolding. She looked at the check once more before letting out a short laugh. "I've managed banks for almost 20 years, she said confidently. "I've seen every kind of scam imaginable." Marcus remained composed. "I'm sure you have. And I know when something doesn't add up," he nodded politely. "That's exactly why verification exists." Rebecca ignored the comment completely. Instead of examining the routing number printed across the bottom, she looked Marcus up and down, once again measuring him by everything except the facts. "You said this belongs to you." "Yes, ma'am. And you're expecting me to believe that I'm asking you to verify it." Her expression tightened. "No. You're asking me to ignore common sense." A few customers exchanged uncertain glances. The businessman who had been reading stock prices quietly slipped his phone into his pocket. Two construction workers stopped talking altogether. Across the lobby, Officer Danielle Brooks noticed the growing crowd. Her years in law enforcement had taught her that people often became spectators before they became witnesses. Sometimes the difference between justice and injustice was simply whether one person was willing to speak before everyone else stayed silent. She walked a few steps closer, not because she suspected Marcus of wrongdoing, but because she sensed the atmosphere changing. Security guard Tom Harris also shifted his position near the entrance, watching respectfully without interfering. Marcus folded his hands together on the counter. "I understand your responsibility," he said calmly. "But responsibility begins with the truth, not assumptions." Rebecca crossed her arms. "Truth," she smiled without warmth. "The truth is, people don't just walk in here carrying $3 million checks." Marcus answered quietly, "Some do." Her eyes narrowed. "Not dressed like that." The words hung heavily in the air. Several customers looked away. Alicia Johnson, the young black teller, lowered her eyes toward her keyboard. She knew exactly what Rebecca meant, and she hated hearing it. Her grandmother had spent 35 years cleaning office buildings after dark while reminding Alicia every single day that dignity never depended on someone's paycheck or wardrobe. "Respect every person," she always said. "You never know the battles they've already won before they walk through your door." Rebecca reached for Marcus's driver's license. "I'll need identification." Marcus handed it over immediately. She examined it briefly, then asked a second form. Without hesitation, Marcus produced another ID from his wallet. Rebecca barely glanced at it before placing both cards on the counter. Marcus waited. Silence stretched between them. Finally he spoke. "Is something wrong with my identification?" "I didn't say that." "Then perhaps you'd like to verify the check." Rebecca ignored the suggestion. Instead, she leaned closer. "Where exactly does someone like you get $3 million?" Marcus smiled gently. The same place anyone else does. Investments business. Years of work. Rebecca laughed louder this time. Several customers heard her clearly. You expect everyone here to believe that, Marcus answered with remarkable patience. I don't expect anyone to believe anything. I expect a bank to follow its own procedures. Officer Brooks listened carefully. Every sentence Marcus spoke remained respectful. Every request was reasonable. Every answer stayed calm. Her police training reminded her of something instructors emphasized. Repeatedly, professionalism isn't tested when people are easy to deal with. It's tested when they're misunderstood. Rebecca slid the aids back across the counter. I think you're wasting everyone's time. Alicia finally gathered enough courage to speak. Miss Collins, Rebecca turned sharply. What, we could contact the issuing bank? It would only take a minute. Rebecca's expression hardened instantly. I didn't ask. Alicia quietly lowered her head. Marcus noticed. So did Officer Brooks. Leadership, she believed, wasn't about controlling people. It was about creating an environment where good people weren't afraid to tell the truth. Unfortunately, fear had already entered the room. Rebecca tapped one fingernail against the check. You know what scammers always have in common? Marcus didn't answer. They stay calm. She smiled proudly as though she had solved a mystery. They rehearse, they prepare. They know exactly what to say. Marcus looked directly at her. I stay calm because anger has never improved. The truth, his words were soft, but they carried farther than shouting ever could. Give people no excuse to misunderstand you. Watching Marcus, she recognized every one of those lessons. Rebecca, however, interpreted his calmness differently. The more polite you act, she said, the more suspicious this becomes. Marcus replied, courtesy shouldn't make anyone suspicious. Officer Brooks stepped closer, remaining careful not to interrupt. She addressed Rebecca respectfully, ma'am. Rebecca looked toward her. Everything okay over here? Rebecca answered before Marcus could speak. Routine fraud investigation. Officer Brooks glanced toward Marcus. Sir, has anyone explained what's being verified? Marcus answered honestly, not yet. I've simply requested they contact the issuing bank. Officer Brooks nodded thoughtfully. That sounds reasonable. Rebecca forced a smile. We have internal procedures. I understand, Officer Brooks replied professionally. I've just found that verifying facts usually helps everyone. Rebecca's jaw tightened. I have this under control. Officer Brooks recognized the tone immediately. Years on the force had taught her that authority sometimes became defensive. Long before it became accountable, she chose not to escalate. Instead, she simply stepped back while continuing to observe. Marcus appreciated her professionalism. With a small nod, she returned it. That quiet exchange didn't go unnoticed by Alicia. For the first time since this encounter began, someone had treated Marcus like a human being instead of a problem. Rebecca suddenly lifted the check again, holding it higher, this time, almost as though displaying evidence before a jury. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced loudly enough for much of the lobby to hear. This is exactly why financial scams continue. Several customers looked uncomfortable. Others remained silence. Marcus knew often became agreement, even when people didn't intend it to. He looked around the room. Not with anger, not with disappointment, only with quiet hope that someone might choose courage over comfort. His father's voice echoed in his memory, exactly as it had decades earlier. The easiest thing in the world is following a crowd. The hardest thing is standing beside the truth, before everyone else sees it. Marcus slowly looked back toward Rebecca, then toward Officer Brooks, then toward Alicia, whose hands rested motionless above her keyboard. The lobby had become more than a bank. It had become a test of character, not only for the man holding the check, but for every person watching what happened next. Rebecca Collins held the check between both hands, staring at it as though the paper itself had offended her. The lobby had fallen so quiet that the faint humming of the air conditioner seemed louder than before. Every customer was watching now. Some pretended they weren't, but their eyes kept drifting back toward the counter. Marcus Ellison stood exactly where he had been from the beginning. His posture never changed. His breathing never changed. His dignity never changed. Officer Danielle Brooks noticed something she had learned during her years wearing the badge. Truly dangerous people usually filled a room with chaos. Truly confident people rarely needed to raise their voices at all. Marcus belonged to the second group. Rebecca lifted the check a little higher. "You know what," she said, loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I'm done wasting this branch's time." Marcus answered calmly, "Then please call the issuing bank." "I've asked for nothing more." Rebecca laughed. "No?" She shook her head. "I don't take instructions from frauds." Alicia Johnson could no longer stay silent. Miss Collins' Rebecca didn't even look at her. "What now? We can verify the routing number in less than a minute." "It's standard procedure." Rebecca spun around sharply. "I said no." Her voice echoed across the marble floor. The room grew even quieter. Officer Brooks watched Alicia lower her eyes again. She recognized that expression immediately. It was the look of someone who knew the right thing to do, but feared the consequences of doing it. Real courage. Officer Brooks knew wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing integrity while afraid. Marcus looked toward Alicia with a gentle smile. "Thank you," he said. "You've already shown more professionalism than most people ever realize." Rebecca rolled her eyes enough. Without warning, she grabbed both ends of the check. The paper stretched between her fingers. Marcus never reached for it. He simply watched, then rip. The sound sliced through the lobby. Several customers gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Rebecca wasn't finished. She ripped it again, then once more. Small, green pieces drifted through the air before landing near Marcus's polished shoes. She stepped closer. "People like you don't walk into my bank carrying $3 million checks." Then she threw the torn pieces directly against his chest. They slid slowly down the front of his old coat, before falling onto the marble floor. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Marcus looked down quietly. He bent his knees with the same patience he'd shown since entering the bank and picked up one torn corner of the check. He folded it carefully into the palm of his hand. Marcus smiled kindly. "I've cooperated from the moment I walked through that door. I'll continue cooperating." Just then, the glass entrance door slid open. A black woman wearing a navy business suit entered the lobby. Carrying a leather portfolio, she walked with quiet confidence. Professional, focused. Her identification badge rested neatly against her jacket. The moment she looked toward the counter, she froze. The portfolio slipped from her hand and struck the marble floor with a loud crack. Every head turned toward her. Rebecca frowned. "Can I help you?" The woman didn't answer. Instead, she walked straight past everyone until she stood directly in front of Marcus. Her eyes settled on the torn pieces still lying near his feet. Then she looked at him, her expression filled with disbelief. "Mr. Allison," her voice almost broke. "I'm so sorry, sir." The entire lobby became perfectly still. Rebecca blinked, "Sir." The woman turned slowly toward the branch manager. "My name is Angela Carter. I'm Executive Vice President of Sterling National Bank." She paused just long enough for every word to sink in. "And Mr. Marcus Ellison is one of the founding investors who helped save this institution during the financial crisis." Silence, absolute silence. No phones rang, no keyboards clicked. No one even seemed to breathe. Officer Danielle Brooks watched Rebecca's confidence disappear in seconds, because respect should never depend on someone's clothes, their skin color, their bank account, or the assumptions others choose to make. Sometimes the greatest wealth a person carries cannot be seen. It is carried in their character, and character never needs expensive clothing to announce itself. As you watch this story unfold, ask yourself one honest question. If you had been standing in that lobby, would you have remained silent, or would you have been the one person willing to stand for the truth before everyone else did?